Welcome back to another weekly GMBN Tech Show. Coming up on this week's show,
get a forest style in your house.
Yeah, we check out that new Cannondale Scalpel.
Some very bespoke carbon modifications.
And there's the new TRP Evo brake.
So, first up in the news this week is a piece from the Andorran bike manufacturer Forestall. So for those of you that don't know, Forestall is a really innovative e-bike manufacturer, and they kind of do things very differently. And check out their website because they've got some insane stuff on there. But what are they releasing this week? Well, it actually relates to all of mountain biking. They're running a pretty cool competition where you can win some Forestall swag, I believe the term is. So it's basically an augmented reality app on their website. And they want to see which of you can make the coolest, most fun, edgiest content by putting one of their bikes in your living room, wherever around your house. Now, I think this is, well, it's a good bit of fun. It's pretty cool. And I think it could be really interesting. Seeing where this technology goes, it might go from being these kind of very fun, engaging apps like this to, I wonder if it would have any application for technical drawings, because how often have we wanted to see something, to scale, when you're kind of disassembling something, etc. So I think it's really, really good. I also think, imagine sizing, how much easier that would be. Obviously the technology would have to move on a bit, but I think it's really cool. So on their website, it's definitely worth checking out the bike itself because they do loads of interesting things and some fresh approaches, which I really like. Like I said, the e-bike's absolutely decked, but when you buy a bike, you get a year's supply worth of tires. How good is that? I think it's absolutely great. So being in Andorra, they're obviously, home of big mountain riding, where Cannondel's based, this small principality that seems to kick out amazing riders, amazing bike brands, and similarly amazing trails. So check out their website, check out Cedric Grassia's Instagram profile for how to enter, and hopefully get you some bits and pieces from them.
Okay, next up in news is that new TRP Evo version of their DH brake. Now, we've of course seen the brake that was developed in 2018 previously. Actually used that on that bike build that we gave away. Fantastic set of brakes, really powerful to be fair, and famously used by Aaron Gwynn and Brendan Fairclough. Now, between them and other TRP athletes, they've been developing them to make them even better. This is the new one. Just take a look at this thing. Now, everything about it has slight differences, all of them for improved power, better response, and a better feel at the bars when you're actually pulling on those brakes. So first up, the disc rotors are available up to 223 millimeters. Now, interestingly, they're much thicker than previous designs. Typically, disc rotors are about 1.85 millimeters thick. These are 2.3, so they are much thicker. Accordingly, the caliper design has to accommodate that as well. But the cool thing about this is they're 8% stiffer, and they're also 47% laterally stiffer. So that's a much stiffer disc rotor. Very important when you're going up to those bigger sizes, the 2.23. Think how much power is going through those things. Now, like I said, every part of the brakes has been basically improved the whole way through. So even the hose itself, they're now 5mm hoses and they're much stiffer. The whole point is better for fluid transfer, they're better under hydraulic pressure, and apparently they're a lot easier to route because they're that much stiffer that you can actually poke them straight through internal routing and get them out the other side. Obviously I've not set these ones up, so I can't tell you that, but it does make perfect sense. Now, the caliper design, as you can see on there, it does say for 2.3mm rotors only. As you can see, that is a 4-piston design. It's a lovely looking bit of kit, to be fair, and they have loads of small little features on them. So there's increased oil flow. A large part of that is thanks to that 5mm hose, and of course the caliper design has that as well. This makes a significant difference, especially for the back brake. You think how much more fluid has to be pushed along the line in order to actuate the brake. It's a longer route, and it's something that they found in testing that needed a bit of attention because the back brake had a bit more fatigue on it to the rider's hand than the front brake did. So they've improved that, so they're now much better for the longer cable routing there. So that's, or hose routing even. The brake pads, they've got a new resin compound, they're increased heat stability, and they've also got a shorter bedding time, so that's a win on all counts. Even the fluid as well, so they use mineral fluid, that is a lower viscosity now and an improved top temperature. So they go up to 230 degrees now, so that is insane. And the fact they're using a lower viscosity means that, again, it's easier on your hands. Everything about them is designed to get maximum power and to minimize the effort that you're putting out at the end of the day, because well, that's what you need with a set of brakes. The levers have their nice dimpled effect on the lever blades. They're one finger profile on them. What I do like is the dimples at the end of the blade there. They're actually drilled holes all the way through. So that means if your brake levers are muddy, you can be able to purge the mud through rather than just sit on mud, which means you're going to be sliding around. So that's good sure-footed or sure-fingered positioning. Nice simple clamp on them, really nice bit of design. Now the piston on them is actually 9mm now, so even that is thicker, and that's designed to like push more fluid. Again, the whole point is to reduce the fatigue at your hand. Again, there's a few more images of them on screen here. Literally everything about them is designed to be more powerful, and they certainly look great to me.
Next up in the news, we're featuring something we actually spotted on Instagram from Hop Carbon Parts. So this is a brand that I hadn't heard of before, but my word, go on their Instagram, go on their website and see some of the drool-worthy kit they're kicking out. Seemingly anything to lighten up your bike made in carbon. We're talking reservoir caps, we're talking top caps for forks. I mean, there's just so much stuff there. What really caught our eye was this XT derailleur tuned by Hop. And I mean, it's crazy. Seem to be ripping most of it out, and it is a reduction of 30% in weight, which is quite a lot. They also do some really nice SRAM stuff, and you know, seemingly for any brand, most brands are covered. They do really nice clamps for your brakes, which just look fantastic. And they are used by Danger Home. Now, for those of you that don't know, Danger Home has been doing some rather ridiculous builds using Scott Geniuses, Scott Sparks and Gamblers on his Instagram, seeing how light he can get them whilst them still being, you know, proper mountain bikes. You know, they're not just showpieces, they're not to be ridden, because he does ride them hard. And check this one out. So this bike comes in at 7.67 kilograms, which isn't that far off the UCI weight limit for road bikes of 6.8 kilograms. And it's just absolutely bananas. So if you check his page out, you know, you can see some some stuff to make you flinch, just scraping the paint off and the lacquer off with a razor blade. You know, it's not for the faint-hearted, but I can't believe, and actually he got this down to 7.33 depending which tyres he fitted. Now, we've featured Danger Home on the show before because he's done some really cool things with remote lockout to actuate both his suspension and his seat post. He's definitely worth a follow because he really does think outside the box, notwithstanding his choice in leggings. Seems like a really cool guy, not afraid to do it differently, and I think, yeah, more power to him.
Okay, so last week we saw the launch of the new Cannondale Scalpel in 2 models. Now, we made a really cool video over on GMBN. There's some shots of it on screen at the moment, and actually I'm going to put a link to it in the description underneath. If you haven't already seen that, I suggest you watch it. It's a bit alternative. Now, the bike itself, really special. I got to look at the XC spec one, whereas Neil had the SE, which is the Trail model. The Trail one runs 120mm SID fork on the front, the real burly 35mm one, and 120 out back, but it's the same frame. Basically, it just used slightly different linkage configuration in order to just accommodate it, basically. Now, the cool thing about the 100mm one I was looking at, the really good selling point on this is that scalpel bladed chainstay design. So it's essentially in place of a horsed pivot on the rear. Now, horsed means it's a 4-bar linkage, and they chose a 4-bar because they can really manipulate suspension to get the best out of it. So very supple design, but really supportive. So there's no reason, even though it caters for riders to be able to lock them out, I can't see anyone actually locking these bikes out because it really does sit up and it's really quite firm, but it still manages to have all the traction it needs. Vital for a 100mm XC bike when they're running super light tyres on them. Now, that chainstay, I'm going to call it a pivot because it effectively flexes. It moves 7 degrees. That's insane. I'm just going to leave you with some shots of it from that video because the bike is just a work of art. I'll tell you what, I've always had a thing for Cannondale, people know that, and the lefty Ocho fork on it just looks incredible. 100mm travel, of course, it's not available in a longer travel option in that single crown. But look at it, this bike, I said it in the video, if that was an animal, I'm pretty sure it'd be a gazelle. That thing is just designed to just bound across open terrain. It just looks incredible. What do you think? Do you think the lefty Ocho is a weird fork? What do you think of that chainstay effective pivot? The reason they've done it is it takes 300 grams off the back end of the bike alone. That's a lot of weight you think there would be in cartridge bearings and pivot bolts and things like that. You're removing that by having a bit of carbon that flexes 7 degrees, which isn't actually a lot in the grand scheme of things, but with the configuration of the back end, it's quite a lot, and enables them to manipulate that back end to make it really supple. Incredible technology. That is my hot tip for XC Bike of the Year, I reckon. That looks a banger. Oh, and one thing I should have said about it, because a lot of people, including Martin actually, when we were behind the scenes before the video, he was like, how can it possibly be strong enough with it bending? It's like, believe me, carbon is immensely strong when it's used in the right context. Now, they actually had a back end of one of these bikes and they put it on a Habit frame because it does actually fit on there. And they had Ratboy and a bunch of other test riders deliberately going out, hanging up, being massive hucks to flat, doing whatever they could to try and bend, twist, snap, and they just could not break this thing. So if you think you dial it back a bit and you think what the bike is intended for, it is going to be absolutely fine. And of course, it's all about the lightweight and that forward propulsion, of which that is what it's going to do. Mega. Okay, last thing in news, actually I just want to pick up on the video that went out at the weekend on my Mondragor Foxy XR, that old bike from, well, developed back to 2012. Now, I didn't get to say in the video where the 10mm stem actually went with today's bikes because the clip was actually got lost, if I'm honest. So I just wanted to tell you now. Now, this is a Mondragor 30mm stem, this is a Mondragor 20, and a 10 is what's on the bike. The 20 came a bit later when riders just wanted a little bit more length, but wanted to maximise on that system. Now, there was a slight downside to having these stems, and it was you basically had to trim your steerage tube down immensely short because it's sat on top. And you think sat on top, and then with a set of high-rise bars or whatever bars you want to run, that's significantly higher than the position you would get on a regular stem. So that's a 30, it's as short as you can get a clamp and a clamp. And you look at the difference in height. So you think that's got to sit a lot lower on the bike. If you trim that steerage tube down, firstly, you've got to commit to it. Secondly, it's going to take you a while because you have to do it incrementally in order to get it the right height. And thirdly, you're left with a steerage tube that's unusable afterwards except for one of these. And I've actually got a fork above you somewhere up in the eaves there that is basically unusable except on that bike because the fact it's trimmed down so short. And Mondragor decided that the best option was to revise it and go for a 30, which is the shortest they could go with a regular style steerage tube and stem interface. So that is what happened. But reach actually on their newer bikes is even longer anyway. So they've just brought these in to make it a bit more realistic with modern day stuff. And of course, this is the cockpit off my nuke proof, and you can see that is a 30mm, so you can see where we are today, which all came really from these. But I had to start this far to find out what those limitations were. Go and have a watch of the video if you've not already seen it. I'd love to know what you think because it was good fun to make the video and always like a trip down memory lane, but more importantly, I love the fact that they gambled everything to make that bike, and as a result of that, we all got really cool bikes today. So cheers again, Mondragor.
So now it is time for the quiz, a place to test your tech knowledge. So the first question is, what does VPP stand for, so the suspension platform, and who was the manufacturer to use it first? So that's question one. Question two, what is special about this old RockShox fork? And three, how does the clutch system differ from Shimano to SRAM derailleurs? You know, just kind of a brief overview in a sentence if you could, and we'll come back with the answers later on.
Okay, so in Top Mods this week, I just want to show you a few things I've done to my bike. I've actually fitted one of the new Fox 36 forks on here, so it's a 140mm travel. It's got a 51mm offset on here, and of course it's got those atmospheric pressure bleed, air bleed ports on the back of the legs there. Ridiculously nice piece of kit. The root beer brown is definitely causing a bit of controversy on Instagram, that's for sure, but I think it looks awesome. I don't care what anyone else thinks, I think it looks great, and it goes really well with all the copper stuff. Check this out. I've been fitting a load of this cool copper stuff from Nukeproof. So this is a 35mm bar I've got on here with the Horizon stem in 35mm. I've also got a really cool little top cap on there. That's from the Trailhead. So remember I did some videos with the Trailhead in Shrewsbury with Sandy. Yeah, she gave me a little top cap, which is rad. It clashes, but it looks great. But it does match my new Ergon grip. So these are the new GD ones. Now these are quite a different affair to the previous grips. they're made of a much softer rubber, so they're really good with bare hands. So that was one of the vices with the older model. I loved them, but with bare hands, it took them a while to get gummy enough to use. They've also got this really cool flange profile on the underneath of the grip here. This is ace on your thumb, and the flange doesn't go all the way around either now as well, so it doesn't interfere with your shifting. That's a really smart move. Now I've actually taken a tip from the GMBN boys, and I've actually put an older Ergon EMTB saddle which has got these little perches on here. I've got the new model on my Specialized e-bike, so I thought I'd just try this old one on here. And actually, because of the saddle position, I run mine quite far forwards and tilted down. That little shelf works amazingly for those really steep climbs, so that's a really cool little hack. I've also just colour matched on here with the little nuke-proof clamp, and I fitted a much faster rolling rear tyre. I've gone for the Vittoria Agaro. So this kind of reminds me a little bit of an Ardent by Maxxis, but it looks like a much more modern version. So instead of ramps, it's actually got like little staircases here, and there's loads of sipes everywhere, as you can probably see. It's got a nice good shoulder profile, but when you look at the actual tread on the top, there's not a lot there. These things roll so fast, so suits me down to the ground. What else have I got on the bike? I think that's about it. Oh, I replaced the headset as well, just to match in with the stem, which I just think looks amazing. I love making all these little hop-ups on bikes because it just makes it a little bit different from all the other ones over on GMBN. Pretty cool, eh? Okay, now it's time for Rewind. This is the retro part of the show. Get to talk about old stuff, basically. If you've got any cool old stuff, mountain biking's of the age now where the earlier stuff, despite the fact some of it might make you wince, is kind of cool because all the good stuff we've got now came from back then. If you've got anything old, let us know. There's a link at the bottom of the screen. If you want to just tell us about the stuff in the comments underneath, use the hashtag Rewind. Alternatively, if you want to ask any questions about where things came from and how certain bike configurations came around, get involved in those comments, let us know, and we'll pick it up in a future show. In the meantime, up on your screen now is a really cool old helmet. So this is a Bell Image. I've never seen one like this. It looks like you must have taken the paint off it completely or got a new micro shell for it and had it custom resprayed. So this is from Andy in Cumbria. It's wicked to see because basically the Bell Image was one of the helmets you had to have back then. So prior to that, there was the Eto, which was an adjustable size helmet, which is pretty crazy. I'm still kind of looking for those on eBay, but they're like hen's teeth, those things. But the Bell Image was a cheap micro shell helmet. It's one of the earliest micro shell helmets. John Tomac used it, good enough for him, it was good enough for anyone. Of course, his were always custom painted. In fact, there he is up there wearing a much later one with a peak on it. But he always had like the American Eagle on it, that was his thing. But the Bell Image, man, what a helmet. I love yours with a Bulldog on it as well. Looking cool with a sort of Union Jack thing going on. Very nice, Andy, and painted Art Asylum 92. Wow, so assuming that was painted in 1992. Old school. Really cool that you still got it as well. Super light helmets, those. Pretty impressive for the time. And also from the same Andy in Cumbria, a Pace RD 100 with a Toga disc drive on the rear, a set of white Onza Porcupines. I can't see what cranks they are, orange, but they do look like bullseye cranks from here. Yeah, and of course there's the Telltale Pace upside down sort of A-head orientation. So the A-head, let's skip back a second, sorry, get tongue twisted here. So conventional headsets had a threaded steer tube, and the headset would be adjusted by the nuts on the top of the headset, and your stem would be on a quill to go inside the steer tube and then adjusted accordingly. Pace were like, well, why are we doing it like this? It's a little bit backwards. We're using two lots of metal inside the tube here and it weighs loads. So they basically had the steer tube was part of the stem, and you adjusted it from the bottom and basically pinched the crown of the fork onto it. So you're eliminating by having a quill on the inside of that. And then later on, the A-head system by Diacomp, now known as Cane Creek, came out. Everyone calls them headsets these days, but the real name is A-headset, developed by them. And it basically had a threadless steer tube on a fork and a stem clamped onto it. It's very similar to this way that Pace did it, but with the Pace one, as you can see, it was the fork that clamped onto it, so they inverted it. But really cool system by having like a welded stem like that. Oh man, Toga disc drive, so nice to see on that. Magura HS33s, but not the race lines, unless you've painted them. You might have painted them, it looks a pretty custom bike. Got to say, I never saw a Pace in the green colour. I'd have been funny about painting one of those. I'd have wanted it in the classic silver or the like the later sort of the gunmetal colour, or the classic anodised purple that Richard Thackeray used to race. But that actually looks wicked. It's really nice. Kind of looks up to date for a modern retro sort of look. But yeah, rad. Thanks for sending that one in, Andy. Next up is from Vince in Switzerland. Wow, so this is a Proflex 857. So the off-road Proflex is one of the earliest mountain bikes with suspension on it, and one of their first models. In fact, it didn't even have a suspension fork. It just used the Guustavv flex stem at the front. Guustavv was one of the designers, Bob Guustavv, of the Proflex bikes. Basically, the brand to start with was called Off-Road. They were called Off-Road Proflex, and the early stems said Off-Road on them instead of Guustavv, but they later went on to sell them aftermarket, and they were known as the Guustavv flex stem. Long way around, a bit of a story there. I've had too many coffees today, and it is bank holiday after all. But the 857 frame, single pivot, it's got the later no-lean shock on the rear there. The earlier ones, of course, had that stack of elastomer rubber or microcell foam, or I don't even know. All the ones that I've seen, have basically shrunk down as it's just sort of deteriorated, but really cool to see the one with the cool shock on it. The fork, of course, the axle moves in a J-style profile, leading link design there. Pretty cool. Nice to see. So the original price was about 4,000 Swiss francs, and it is quite a high-end bike, yeah. What would I do with it? I'd keep it, to be fair. I'd give it a good clean. I'd probably put some tan wool tyres on it because I think they would look really cool on there. I like the fact you've got that XTR chainset, the pull component rear derailleur. That's just beautiful. I would get rid of that monstrosity of a saddle on it, and seat post looks disgusting as well. I would maybe get like a USC seat post and get a flight saddle on there. That'd really clean it up. The bars and stem don't look right. I'd get something much nicer, a bit more elegant looking on there. But other than that, like, it's pretty good stuff on there, to be fair, Vince. It's worth giving it a good strip down and giving it some loving, because it's a rad bike. There you go, there's that pull component derailleur. I wonder if that was pink originally or if it was red and it faded in the sun. Either way, it's cool, but you know, you can fully strip those down. The whole point of those pull components derailleurs was that they cost a fortune, but you could strip them down and rebuild the whole thing to get it working just like new. So I'll definitely be doing that, and putting a cable end cap on it as well. Keep the cable looking good. But man, really cool. Like, love it. Yeah, definitely give that some TLC. Send us some pictures if you get it going again, because I'd love to see what it looks like. With a bit of work on there. And last one this week, wow, we've got loads. This one's from Stockholm, Sweden. This is from Arvid, a Kona Hahana. Really enjoying the show, especially Bike Cave and Rewind. Cool, well, Henry's got some great Bike Cave options on the show. So this is a restoration of a Kona Hahana from 1997. It looked like a disaster just a few weeks ago, but some TLC and some good tools, it came out shiny and functional. Oh, there we go. So there's the flat lay with all the bits. Unfortunately, the tyres were beyond saving. The bike's built to be used. I've put some Kona Correct Maxxis on it instead. The whole restoration is documented in the Swedish bike community, where all the steps can be seen. When my Bike Cave's done, I'll upload some pictures of that. Awesome stuff. And I love the detail you've gone to on that. You really have cleaned that up a treat. Yeah, look at that race light tubing on there. I always loved the look of those earlier Konas. They had such aggressive looking frames. If you look at other mountain bikes in that period, a lot of them had sloping top tubes that went the other way. If you look at some of the earlier Treks, or flat top tubes, and Konas were the first ones that had that low slung, aggressive sort of looks to them. Wicked frames. Man, you even stripped down the rear derailleur. Fair play. Yeah. It's a great colour as well, isn't it? And there's that flat lay once again. Gotta love a flat lay. That must take you some time. Really spent a bit of time lining everything up there. That pleases me. The OCD. Oh, there we go. Looks awesome. Rad bike. Neil's got an old Lava Dome. I think it's like a 91 or maybe earlier. The yellow paint flicker one. But somewhere along the way he lost the fork off it, so it hasn't got the original Project 2 fork on it that was painted. We need to sort that out somehow. We need to. Does anyone know how to do the paint flicker like that, or has anyone got one of those forks? Because I know he'd love to get one on there and sort of give it a bit of love, rebuild it. It's currently his commuter bike with a set of mudguards on, but I reckon we can convince him to do a bit of a geek job on it. Looks mega. Great selection of Rewind stuff there, guys. See you next week.
So now it is time for Bike Cave. So this is where we can feature where you store your bikes, where you work on your bikes, you know the score. So if you do have a good submission, get in the upload link below and hopefully we can feature it on the show. So the first submission is from Willem, who lives in Hampshire. And basically he has seized the opportunity of an empty stable to really kit out this Bike Cave, and it does look, well, it looks really, really good. All the tools seem to be there. It's very light, which I like, and I'm in, you know, ample storage really. Got a cool, what's that bike on the end? Is that a transition? Looks pretty good. Some skateboards kicking about, just some Kashima lowers just there. Why not? You know, ornamental purposes only maybe, but it looks good. And yeah, it looks really solid. So the next one we don't actually have a name for, which I'm sorry about, but it's somebody showing off their beautiful V10 in what looks to be some kind of outside, well, an outdoor shed, of course, outdoor shed as opposed to an indoor one, but it looks really, really good. Yet again, kind of a nice natural feel, loads of space, and I mean loads of space, and that's something I don't have, so I'm very envious. And yeah, it looks really good. And that V10 is very nice indeed. What else we got? Bits and bobs kicking about. It's hard to see, but yeah, looks very tidy indeed. I mean, you've got enough WD-40 stuff there. Nice. And on to the next one, which is a really, really cool submission. So this is Andre in Norway, and basically he's moved into a new house, and this is his opportunity, his time to shine. He has kind of bagsied the garage for bike purposes, and it looks really, really cool. Yet again, a very well-equipped workshop. That's 3 in a row this week. And he's actually building up a new Polar Evo link, which certainly looks the part, eh? And he thought, yeah, he'd make the most of the opportunity to really go to town. I see that he's kind of got excited with the build and started it before he hasn't got the parts all there yet, which is certainly something I've done before. I recognise the caliper just hanging off the stay, waiting for the correct adapter to come. No, looks like a cool bike. Lovely stuff. So guys, if you have your own submission, get it into the upload link below, and hopefully we can feature it on the show.
Okay, now time for some quiz answers. I hope you haven't been Googling away trying to find stuff. Okay, so the first question Henry asked was, what does VPP stand for, and who had a bike out using it first? Okay, so anyone get this? Come on, you should have got it. It's Virtual Pivot Point. And the brand, I think some of you might have said Santa Cruz, but you'd be wrong. It's actually Outland bikes. Now, Outland had bikes out in the mid-90s. I think 95 might have been their first one. The first one I'm aware of was 1998, but I know they had early ones. And Rob Roskop of Santa Cruz was looking for a bike that you can increase the suspension on it and you could basically pedal without wallowing around too much. And when he stumbled across Outland, he realised that, wow, this has so much potential and I can do something with this. And he basically bought the rights to the design and then completely redeveloped it using the same principles of that virtual pivot point, where you effectively sag in a sort of an S point, and as you pedal it keeps it flat. And the first bike they launched was the V10. So they came straight out with a 10-inch travel downhill bike that pedaled really as well as cross-country full suspension bikes at the time. Mind-blowing. Now, he also teamed up with Jeff Stieber from Intense Bikes, and they basically helped Jeff, and Jeff helped him develop it. So between the two brands, Santa Cruz and Intense, they worked really closely on the VPP system, and really they're to thank for how well it rides today. But the original was the Outland. Okay, so next question was, what is so special about this old RockShox fork? Anyone got it? Yeah, it was designed for road bikes. It's the RockShox Mag 21 SRTi PR, which stood for Paris-Roubaix. And if you look closer, you might just be able to see some Paris-Roubaix graphics on there. It was designed for that notoriously rough stage of the Tour de France, where it's essentially all on cobbles. Really, really rough. You can see it's quite bone-shaking stuff. Now, the fork weighed, I think, 2.6 pounds, which is featherweight for a fork like that, but obviously it's like having an anchor on your bike if you're used to traditional road bike forks. So it wasn't that popular, but it did win Paris-Roubaix twice. So it was clearly very good at what it was supposed to do. Quite rare, I hear, these days, but it'd make a pretty cool fork if you've got a gravel bike, if you can find one on eBay. I would. Next up, how does the clutch differ on SRAM and Shimano mechs? Okay, well, they've got basically fundamentally the same sort of idea, and it's a rotational clutch designed to using a Sprag style format in order to calm down your chain, basically. But the difference is between the two, Shimano have a lever that locks it on and off, and you can adjust the tension of the clutch as well. Good if yours comes loose with time, you can tweak it back up. But the clutch is always kind of there. By turning the clutch off, it means basically it's off, so you can manipulate the lower cage easier for removing your wheel. but the SRAM one has a little thing extra, a bit different. So they've got a system called cage lock. The clutch itself is non-adjustable. It's a very powerful clutch on the SRAM radius, but they've got a lock for the cage. So literally you manipulate the cage forward and you push this pin and it holds the cage. The whole thing is locked open. Super easy to remove your rear wheel. Great system. Really cool systems from both and totally different approaches, but I've got to say I'm a big fan of the cage lock by SRAM. It really does make removing a wheel a lot easier.
Now guys, that is it for another weekly GMBN Tech Show. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe and get in the comments